The CEO of the company was a man who had built his business from almost nothing. He came from humble beginnings and knew what it felt like to work long hours at jobs where people didn't always treat him with respect. That memory never left him, even when he became successful. He believed that no matter how big a company grows, respect and kindness should be at the heart of everything. But as the company got larger, he began hearing whispers that not everyone inside his workplace shared the same values. At first, the CEO brushed it off as gossip. In big companies, rumors always find a way to spread. But soon, he noticed a pattern. A few employees had quietly come forward and mentioned how lower-level workers, especially cleaners and maintenance staff, were being treated unfairly. Some workers were ignored, some were spoken to rudely, and others felt invisible, like they didn't matter at all. The CEO felt uneasy. He had worked too hard to let his company turn into a place where people felt small just because of their job title. One evening, he sat alone in his office, staring at the city lights from his tall glass window. The office was quiet, but his mind was full of questions. What if the complaints were true? What if his own employees, people he trusted, were behaving badly when he wasn't around? The thought made him restless. He didn't just want his company to be profitable, he wanted it to be a place where every single person, from managers to janitors, felt respected. But how could he be sure? After all, the moment a boss walks into a room, people change their behavior. Everyone smiles, everyone acts polite, but that politeness might disappear once the boss is gone. The CEO knew that to discover the truth, he had to see the company through different eyes. He thought about hiring inspectors or consultants, but that felt too cold and impersonal. Strangers could come in, collect reports, and leave, but the heart of the problem might remain hidden. He needed someone who could move quietly through the hallways, someone who would be ignored, someone who could see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. The more he thought about it, the heavier his heart felt. His company was like his family, and if people inside that family were being mistreated, then it was his responsibility to fix it. He had built the business on strong values, hard work, respect, and dignity. If those values were being forgotten, it was like losing the soul of the company. And the soul of the company mattered more to him than the money it made. As the night grew darker, memories of his own struggles came back. He remembered the time when he worked as a cleaner in a small store just to earn extra cash. Some people treated him like he was invisible, as if his hard work meant nothing. Those experiences had shaped him, and he had promised himself that if he ever became successful, he would never allow such disrespect in his own workplace. Now, years later, he was facing the same problem from the other side. It almost felt like life was testing him. The next morning, the CEO walked into the office with a firm decision forming in his mind. He greeted his staff, shook hands, and listened to updates on projects, but deep down, his thoughts were elsewhere. He couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling anymore. Something had to be done. He wanted to uncover the truth, even if it hurt. He wanted to know which employees truly carried the values of kindness, and which ones only pretended when the boss was nearby. But he also felt nervous. What if he found out things that broke his heart? What if people he trusted turned out to be cruel behind his back? What if managers, the very people responsible for leading teams, were the ones spreading negativity? The thought made him clench his fists under the desk. Still, he knew that avoiding the truth was worse than facing it. That day, he made a phone call to the one person he trusted more than anyone else: his mother. She had always been his guide, his teacher, and his moral compass. She knew about hard work and dignity better than anyone because she had raised him with those very values. When he explained his worries, she listened quietly, and then she gave him advice that changed everything. His mother told him that sometimes the only way to see people's true character is to stand where they don't expect you to stand. If you want to know how someone treats others, watch how they treat those they believe are powerless. Her words struck him deeply. And that was when an idea began to form in his mind. An idea that was bold, risky, and completely unexpected. The CEO leaned back in his chair after hanging up the phone, his eyes filled with both worry and determination. He knew this was not just about saving his company, it was about protecting the values he believed in. Whatever it took, he would get to the truth. And little did he know, the decision he was about to make, with his mother's help, would shake his company to its core and reveal the true nature of the people working for him. The idea came slowly at first, like a small spark inside the CEO's mind. But the more he thought about it, the stronger it grew. He couldn't shake off his mother's words. If you want to know someone's true character, watch how they treat the people they think are powerless. Those words echoed in his heart. He knew she was right. He had seen enough in his life to understand that kindness shown only to those in power isn't real kindness at all, it's just acting. That night, as he sat at home eating dinner with his mother, he shared his worry again. The company was growing fast, but he was afraid that its sole respect, honesty, and humility was being lost along the way. His mother listened carefully, her eyes calm but sharp. After a long pause, she leaned forward and said something he didn't expect. "Let me go in." The CEO frowned. "Go in? What do you mean, Mama?" "I mean, let me work there," she replied firmly. "Not as your mother, not as the CEO's mom, but as someone ordinary. Someone no one pays attention to. Maybe a cleaner, maybe a janitor. If your employees have forgotten how to treat people with dignity, I'll see it with my own eyes. They won't know who I am. They'll just see me as another worker." At first, the CEO laughed softly, thinking she was joking. His mother was nearly 70, with silver hair that she usually wore in a neat bun. She lived a comfortable life now. Why would she want to sweep floors, empty trash bins, and wipe tables just to test strangers? But when he looked at her face, he saw determination there. She was serious. "Son," she said gently, "you can't always be the one watching. People will never act naturally when you are in the room. But me, no one will suspect. They'll ignore me, or they'll show their true hearts. Either way, you'll know the truth." The CEO leaned back, stunned. Could this actually work? His mind raced with the possibilities. His mother had always been strong and fearless. She had raised him on her own after his father passed away, working 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to keep food on the table. She had been a cleaner before. She knew exactly what it felt like to be invisible. If anyone could do this undercover mission, it was her. Over the next few days, they began to quietly plan the details. It had to be done carefully. If word got out, employees would start acting fake, and the whole plan would collapse. So they told no one, not even the managers, not even the HR department. Only the CEO and his mother knew. They decided she would join as a temporary janitor, hired through a small, outside cleaning agency that worked with the company from time to time. This way, her paperwork and identity would look legitimate, and no one inside the company would suspect anything unusual. She would wear a plain uniform, simple gloves, and a cap to hide her face as much as possible. The CEO's mother practiced walking slowly, speaking softly, blending in. "The trick," she said with a smile, "is to make people forget you are even there. That is when they reveal themselves." The CEO felt both nervous and excited. He didn't want his mother to face harsh treatment, but he also trusted her strength. If anyone could handle this, it was her. And deep down, he knew she was right. This was the only way to see the truth. On the night before her first day, the CEO couldn't sleep. He paced his room, wondering how his employees would behave. Would they show respect, or would they show arrogance? Would they treat her with kindness, or would they treat her as if she didn't matter? The thought made his chest tighten. Meanwhile, his mother slept peacefully. She wasn't afraid. She had faced much worse in her life. To her, this was not just about exposing the employees, it was about teaching a lesson. A company could only stay strong if every person inside it understood that no role was small. The next morning, she dressed in her new uniform. A plain blue shirt, dark pants, and a cap pulled low. She carried a small cleaning bag filled with basic supplies, rags, sprays, and gloves. Looking at herself in the mirror, she hardly recognized the woman staring back. She didn't look like the mother of a CEO anymore. She looked like someone who blended into the background. And that was exactly what she needed. When she arrived at the company building, no one gave her a second glance. Employees rushed past. Her, busy with their own lives, tapping on phones, sipping coffee, chatting with one another. Not a single person stopped to say hello. For the first time, she felt invisible inside her own son's empire. She smiled faintly. "This is going to be interesting," she whispered to herself. Back in his office, the CEO sat nervously, pretending to read reports while his mother moved quietly through the halls. Every few hours, she sent him short notes about what she saw. Some employees smiled politely, while others ignored her completely. One even sighed loudly when she took too long cleaning near his desk. The CEO clenched his fists as he read the message, already feeling his blood boil. But this was only the beginning. The undercover mission had just started. And neither the CEO nor his mother had any idea just how shocking the truth would be in the days to come. Asterisk. The morning was cool and quiet when the CEO's mother stepped out of her small apartment wearing the plain blue janitor's uniform. She carried an old-looking bag filled with basic cleaning supplies, sprays, gloves, and a small mop. She had tied her silver hair back into a tight bun and tucked it under a faded cap. In the mirror, she had looked like someone else entirely. There was no sign that she was the mother of a powerful man. She looked ordinary, maybe even a little tired. Just another worker about to start her day. And that was exactly the point. As she walked into the tall glass building, the employees passed by without noticing her. Men in suits hurried toward the elevators. Women in heels clacked across the polished floors. Some sipping coffee, some checking their phones. Nobody greeted her, nobody smiled. She was invisible. For a moment, she felt a strange ache in her heart. This was her son's company, a place he had built with love and sacrifice. Yet here she was, being treated like a shadow. The receptionist looked up briefly when she approached the desk, her tone flat and impatient. "Yes," she asked without a smile. "I'm the new janitor," she replied softly, handing over the small badge the cleaning agency had given her. The receptionist nodded, barely glancing at it, then waved her hand toward a hallway. "Supplies closet is down there. You'll get the schedule." And just like that, the receptionist went back to typing, as if the woman in front of her didn't exist. The CEO's mother didn't argue. She simply nodded, thanked her, and walked away. But inside, she was already taking notes. The receptionist had been professional, yes, but cold, no warmth, no kindness, just dismissal. For someone new, especially an older worker, even a small smile would have mattered. She pushed the heavy cart out of the supplies closet, her hands firm on the handle. As she walked the hallways, she watched carefully. Some people made way for her cart, but others acted like she wasn't there, brushing past roughly, even bumping into her without an apology. One young man in a sharp suit sighed loudly when her cart blocked his path for a few seconds. "Move faster, please," he muttered under his breath. She lowered her eyes and moved aside, but her heart was already heavy. Not everyone was unkind, though. In the corner office, a young assistant noticed her struggling with a heavy trash bag. "Let me help you with that," the assistant said, lifting the bag with ease and smiling warmly. The CEO's mother smiled back, her eyes soft. "Thank you, dear," she whispered. That small act of kindness gave her strength to continue. The hours passed slowly. She bent down to scrub floors, wiped windows, and emptied bins. She could feel the strain in her back, the kind of physical tiredness she hadn't felt in years. But she welcomed it reminded her of her younger days when she worked double shifts just to keep food on the table. Back then, she had learned what dignity truly meant. She was testing if these young, educated employees understood the same lesson in the cafeteria. She deliberately sat at a corner table during lunch break, pretending to eat a small sandwich. Workers gathered in groups, laughing and chatting, but no one invited her to join. Two employees at a nearby table started gossiping loudly about the old cleaner lady. They mocked her slow movements, even mimicking the way she bent down to pick up trash. One of them laughed, saying, "I don't know why they hired these people. They just slow everything down." Her cheeks burned, but she stayed quiet, staring at her sandwich. She had expected this, but hearing it firsthand was painful. Still, she reminded herself, this was exactly why she was here to see the truth. Later, in the afternoon, she passed by a manager's office to clean. The manager, a tall man with sharp glasses, frowned at her. "Don't come in now," he said curtly. "Do it later. And make sure you don't leave streaks on the glass again. Last time someone did a terrible job." His voice was sharp, as if speaking to a child. She nodded quickly, keeping her head low, but inside she felt her anger rising. He didn't know who she was. Of course, he didn't care. To him, she was just the janitor. By the time her shift ended, her feet ached, her arms were sore, and her heart was heavy with mixed emotions. She had seen small sparks of kindness. Yes, but she had also seen arrogance, disrespect, and cruelty. Some employees had treated her like a human being, while others had treated her like furniture, something useful but unworthy of attention. When she finally left the building, the evening sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. She walked slowly toward the bus stop, her cleaning bag still heavy on her shoulder. But her mind was even heavier, filled with the story she would tell her son that night. Sitting at the kitchen table, she shared everything with the CEO. She described the receptionist's coldness, the young assistant's kindness, the mocking laughter in the cafeteria, and the sharp words of the manager. The CEO listened silently, his jaw tightening with every detail. He had expected some disrespect, but hearing how deep it went broke his heart. His mother placed her hand on his. "Son, today was just the first day. I will go again tomorrow. I will watch more. I will listen more. Let the truth come out slowly. You must see not only the bad, but also the good. You must know who respects people and who does not." The CEO nodded, his eyes burning with both anger and determination. He realized now that this undercover mission was not just an experiment. It was a mirror, showing the hidden face of his company. And the reflection he saw on this first day was not one he liked, but it was only the beginning. The next morning, the CEO's mother tied her hair into a bun, pulled her cap low over her forehead, and buttoned up her simple janitor's uniform once again. Her back was sore from the previous day, and her knees ached from bending and scrubbing. But she didn't complain. She had promised her son that she would see this mission through. And she was determined to keep that promise. As she entered the tall glass building, she carried the heavy cart filled with sprays, brooms, and rags. Once again, people rushed past her without a word, their eyes glued to their phones, their hands clutching coffees. She was invisible, but today, she reminded herself to look not only for disrespect, but also for kindness. After all, not every heart was cold. Some people still carried warmth inside them. The first spark of kindness came sooner than she expected. She was mopping near the entrance when a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, walked past with a stack of files in her arms. The pile was too heavy, and a few papers slipped from the top, fluttering to the floor. The CEO's mother bent down quickly, her old hand steady, and gathered the papers. She handed them back with a gentle smile. The young woman looked surprised. "Oh, thank you so much," she said, smiling warmly. Unlike the others, she looked into the janitor's eyes as she spoke. "That was really kind of you." For a moment, the older woman was speechless. It had been so long since anyone in that building had spoken to her with genuine gratitude. She simply nodded. "You're welcome, dear." The small exchange filled her with quiet hope. Later, as she struggled to push her cart into the elevator, a young intern noticed her difficulty. He quickly stepped forward, holding the door open and even helping to pull the cart inside. "These wheels are tricky, huh?" He joked lightly, smiling at her. She chuckled softly. "Yes, they are." "Thank you, young man." "No problem," he replied. "My grandmother always says, if you see someone struggling, you help. That's just what people are supposed to do." The CEO's mother's heart swelled at his words. She thought to herself, if this boy stays in the company, my son's business will be in good hands. As the day went on, she continued to see small but meaningful acts of kindness. A middle-aged woman in the accounting department offered her a bottle of water after noticing her wiping sweat from her forehead. "It's hot today. Please take this," the woman said gently. The CEO's mother accepted it, grateful not for the drink itself, but for the humanity behind it. During her lunch break, she sat alone at her usual table in the cafeteria. This time, however, the same young assistant who had helped her with the trash bag the day before walked over with her. "Trey, mind if I sit with you?" she asked cheerfully. The older woman's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "Of course, dear." They ate together, chatting about simple things, the weather, the food, the bus routes. The assistant didn't ask any personal questions, didn't treat her as less, just spoke to her as if she were any other person in the building. For the first time in days, the janitor felt a sense of belonging. But perhaps the most touching act of kindness came later in the afternoon. She was mopping a hallway when her back gave a sudden, sharp pain. She leaned on the mop for support, trying not to cry out. At that moment, a soft voice spoke behind her. "Are you okay?" She turned and saw a young man from the IT department, his eyes filled with concern. "Do you need to sit down? I can finish this part for you." "Oh no," she said quickly, embarrassed. "This is my job." But the young man gently took the mop from her hands. "Jobs are jobs, but people come first. Please, rest for a minute." She watched as he carefully mopped the section of the floor she had been working on. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away before he could see. Nobody had done something like that for her in years. It wasn't about the mop. It was about the kindness. When she returned home that evening, she sat with her son and told him everything. She described the young woman with the files, the intern in the elevator, the accountant with the water, the assistant in the cafeteria, and the IT worker who had mopped the floor for her. The CEO listened intently, his expression softening with every story. He felt pride that some of his employees understood respect and kindness, even when dealing with someone they believed had no power. These were the kind of people he wanted leading his company into the future. But his mother's tone grew serious. As she added, "For every one act of kindness, there are two of cruelty. These good people are the light, yes, but they are surrounded by darkness. If you don't act soon, son, the darkness will swallow the light." Her words hit him hard. He realized that this undercover mission was more than just a test. It was a battle for the soul of his company. And the small acts of kindness she had witnessed were proof that goodness still existed there. But it needed to be protected and encouraged. That night, the CEO sat alone in his office again, replaying his mother's stories in his mind. The image of the IT worker holding the mop, the intern holding the elevator door, the assistant sitting in the cafeteria, they gave him hope. But he also thought about the mocking laughter, the sharp words, the cold stares. The contrast was clear. His company was divided between those who lived with respect and those who lived without it. And soon, he would have to decide who stayed and who left. The third day of her undercover mission began quietly. The CEO's mother put on her worn uniform again, tied her silver hair under her faded cap, and walked toward the building with her cleaning cart. She had already seen both sides of her son's company acts of kindness that warmed her heart, and cold dismissals that stung her pride. But nothing prepared her for the cruel disrespect she was about to face. When she entered the lobby, the receptionist barely glanced at her. "You again," the young woman muttered under her breath, as though the janitor's presence was an inconvenience. The older woman forced a small smile and pushed her cart forward, pretending not to hear. But inside, she felt the sting. She reminded herself to stay calm. Her son needed the truth, and she would give it to him, no matter how painful. That morning, she began cleaning near the marketing department. The office was buzzing with energy, people laughing, chatting, clicking away at their keyboards. As she bent down to pick up scraps of paper left on the carpet, two young employees walked past. Their voices loud enough for her to hear. "Look at her," one whispered with a smirk. "She moves so slowly. No wonder old people shouldn't be working," the other chuckled. "I know, right? Grandmother can't even climb stairs anymore. Quina. Why do they even hire people like her? Probably desperate for cheap labor." They laughed and walked away, not even lowering their voices. The CEO's mother kept her head down, her hands trembling slightly as she continued to gather the papers. She had lived through struggle before. She had been poor, overworked, and underestimated. But hearing those words, spoken so carelessly, made her chest ache. She wanted to stand up and shout, "Do you know who I am?" But she bit her tongue. The mission was more important than her pride. Later in the day, she entered the cafeteria with her cart. Several employees were eating lunch, chatting loudly at the tables. As she wiped down the counters, one man purposely tossed his sandwich wrapper onto the freshly cleaned surface. "Oops," he said mockingly, without even looking at her. "Guess you'll have to clean that again." His friends at the table snickered. The older woman picked up the wrapper silently, her eyes burning with shame and anger. She wanted to believe it was just a moment of thoughtlessness, but deep down, she knew it was deliberate. Some people saw a janitor not as a human being, but as a tool. A pair of hands, nothing more. In the afternoon, she made her way to the executive floor, where managers and senior staff had their offices. She knocked softly on one door before entering to empty the trash. The manager inside barely looked up. "From his computer, you missed a spot yesterday," he said sharply, pointing to the corner of his office. "Do a better job this time, and hurry, I have a meeting." "Yes, sir," she murmured, bending down to pick up the trash. As she reached for a piece of paper on the floor, the manager sighed loudly. "Honestly, I don't know why they keep hiring people who can't even do simple tasks right. Useless." Her hands froze. The words struck her like a slap across the face. She stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the floor, willing herself not to respond. But inside, her blood boiled. This was not just rudeness. This was humiliation. When she left the room, her shoulders felt heavy. She walked slowly down the hall, pushing her cart, her heart pounding in her chest. This was her son's company, the company he had built with love, sweat, and sacrifice. And here she was, being treated like dirt by the very people who were supposed to carry his vision forward. But the worst moment came just before the end of her shift. She was cleaning the restroom when two employees walked in, chatting loudly. They didn't notice her at first, hidden in one corner with her mop. One of them laughed. "I swear, this company is full of people who don't matter. Like the janitors, who even cares about them? They're just here to pick up after us." The other added with a cruel chuckle, "Yeah, they're basically invisible. You could insult them to their face and they wouldn't dare say a word. Watch." This, then, turning toward her, he smirked. "Hey, old lady, you missed a spot? What are they paying you for, huh? Hurry up, before I slip and sue the company." His friend burst out laughing. The CEO's mother's grip tightened around the mop handle. Her heart raced. She wanted to shout, to reveal who she truly was, to put these young men in their place. But she swallowed her anger and forced herself to stay calm. This was exactly why she was here to witness the truth, to see who her son could trust and who he could not. That evening, she returned home with her shoulders slumped, her face pale with exhaustion. Her son noticed immediately. "Mama, what happened today?" he asked gently, pulling out a chair for her at the table. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling as she removed her cap. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. The words of cruelty echoed in her mind. Useless, invisible, old lady. Finally, she looked at her son with weary eyes. "You were right to worry," she said softly. "Some of your people are kind, but others are cruel. They don't see people, only positions. To them, a janitor is less than nothing. And today, I saw the truth with my own eyes." The CEO's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. Anger flashed in his eyes, but beneath it was sorrow. He had built his company to be a place of respect and dignity. Now, it seemed that dream was being poisoned from within. His mother placed her hand on his arm. "Don't lose hope, son. There are still good hearts here, but you must act. The bad will destroy the good if you don't." Her voice was steady, but inside, she was still shaking. The pain of the insults lingered, not because they wounded her pride, but because they revealed something far worse: the rot inside the company walls. And she knew that the next days would bring even more truth to light. The next morning, the CEO's mother woke up earlier than usual. She stood in front of her mirror, staring at her own reflection. The lines on her face seemed deeper, her eyes a little heavier, but her spirit had grown sharper. She knew now that her mission was no longer just about observing. It was about collecting evidence, proof that no one could deny. Words could be argued, stories could be twisted, but evidence would speak louder than anything. As she put on her uniform, she tucked a small notebook into her pocket. The night before, her son had handed her a simple voice recorder, small enough to hide inside her cleaning bag. "Use this if you hear anything important," he had said, his voice quiet but firm. "I trust you, Mama. Just be careful." She had smiled faintly. "Don't worry, son. I've been careful all my life." When she arrived at the building that day, she moved differently. She still pushed her cart, still bent her head low, but her eyes and ears were sharper than ever. Every word, every gesture, every look, she paid attention to it all. And this time, she wrote it down. Her first entry came quickly. In the hallway outside the marketing department, she overheard two employees whispering about her. "She's too slow," one said. "I swear, I could clean this place faster with my eyes closed." "Yeah," the other replied, laughing. "Bet she's working here because her kids don't want to take care of her anymore." The CEO's mother kept her face blank, but as soon as they walked away, she slipped into a corner and wrote every word into her notebook. She even noted the time, the place, and their names, which she had learned by listening carefully to office chatter. Later, in the cafeteria, she sat at her usual corner table. Today, she pulled the small recorder from her bag, switched it on, and placed it under a napkin. As she quietly sipped her water, she overheard a group of employees laughing about how cleaners are basically company ghosts. They're everywhere. One of them joked, but nobody notices them. Perfect job if you want to disappear from the world. The others burst out laughing. One even slapped the table, adding, "And the best part? You can treat them however you want. They won't dare say a thing." The words stung, but this time, instead of only feeling pain, she felt a strange sense of power. Every cruel laugh, every mocking word, they were now captured forever. Proof, evidence, truth. In the afternoon, she returned to the executive floor. The same manager who had humiliated her before was on the phone, his voice loud enough to carry through the office. She quietly emptied his trash as he spoke. "Yeah, I don't care who cleans my office," he said into the phone, rolling his eyes. "They're all useless anyway. Half the time, they just stand around pretending to work. Honestly, the janitors here are a joke." The CEO's mother pressed the record button again, her heart pounding. She didn't move too quickly or too slowly, just enough to appear invisible while capturing his words. When she left his office, her hands trembled, but her notebook and recorder felt heavier with evidence. That evening, on her way out of the building, she witnessed another cruel moment. A young man carrying a cup of coffee bumped into her cart. Instead of apologizing, he shouted, "Watch where you're going, old lady. These hallways aren't your living room." He stormed off, leaving the coffee dripping down her cart. She bent down to clean the mess, but before she did, she wrote his words down in her notebook, carefully describing the scene. Then she cleaned quietly, as though nothing had happened. When she finally returned home that night, her son was waiting at the table. She placed the notebook and recorder in front of him. His eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, reading her detailed notes. Every insult, every act of disrespect, every moment of cruelty was all there, written with dates, times, and names. He picked up the recorder next, pressing play. The voices of his employees filled the kitchen, mocking laughter, careless insults, cruel jokes. His jaw clenched as he listened, his chest rising and falling with anger. "I can't believe this," he whispered. "These are my people. I trusted them." His mother placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Son, not all of them. Remember the kind ones, the assistant, the intern, the IT worker. They are proof that goodness still exists here. But the others..." She shook her head slowly. "The others are poisoning your company from the inside." For the first time in days, the CEO felt both fury and relief. Fury at the cruelty his mother had endured, but relief that now he had proof. No one could deny it. No one could say it was just gossip or exaggeration. The evidence was real, and it was in his hands. Over the next few days, his mother continued her undercover mission with renewed focus. Every insult, every cruel joke, every dismissive gesture, she wrote it all down. Every kind word, every small act of respect, she recorded too. By the end of the week, her notebook was nearly full, and the recorder had hours of audio. She didn't just see the company anymore, she felt it. The building had two faces. One was kind and humble, shown in the small acts of humanity she had experienced. The other was arrogant and cruel, shown in the disrespect she endured. And now, both faces were exposed. On her final evening, she closed her notebook, placed it beside the recorder, and looked at her son with steady eyes. "You wanted the truth," she said softly. "Now you have it. What you do next will decide the future of this company." The CEO stared at the pile of evidence in front of him. His heart was heavy, but his mind was clear. The time for observation was over. The time for action was about to begin. The CEO had not slept the night before. He sat at his desk long after midnight, staring at the notebook and recorder his mother. had filled during her undercover mission. Every cruel word she had written down echoed in his mind. Every mocking laugh on the recording made his blood boil. But he didn't just feel anger, he felt betrayed. These were the people he paid well, the people he trusted to carry his vision forward. And yet, behind closed doors, they had shown their true faces. That morning, as the sun rose, he made his decision. It was time to stop watching in silence. It was time to reveal the truth when his mother arrived at the building. Dressed once again in her janitor's uniform, he met her in his office. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but also a fire of determination burning inside him. "Are you ready, Mama?" he asked quietly. She gave a firm nod. "I've been ready since the first day I walked in here. Let's end this." The CEO picked up his phone and sent a message to the entire company. Within the hour, every employee from interns to managers was called to gather in the main conference hall. Nobody knew why. Whispers spread quickly. Some assumed it was a sudden announcement, others thought it was about a new deal or a merger. A few joked nervously, wondering if the company was in trouble. When the employees gathered, the room buzzed with chatter. The CEO walked to the front, his expression stern. At his side stood the woman everyone thought they knew, the quiet, elderly janitor who pushed her cart through the hallways each day. She stood tall, her face calm but unreadable. The CEO raised his hand, and silence fell. Over the past weeks, he began, his voice steady but cold. "I have been concerned about the true culture of this company. On the surface, everything looks good. Profits are up. Deals are strong. But numbers do not tell the whole story. What matters most is how we treat one another." The employees shifted uneasily. Some exchanged nervous glances. Others stared at the floor. That is why the CEO continued. "I made a decision. I wanted to see how people behave when they think no one important is watching. I wanted to know how you treat those who clean your floors, empty your trash, and keep this building running. Because respect is not just for your boss, it is for every human being." He turned toward the woman standing next to him. "Many of you know this lady as the janitor who has been working among you for the past few weeks." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "But today, you will know who she truly is." The room grew still. The employees leaned forward, confused. The CEO's mother reached up slowly, removed her cap, and let her silver hair fall free. For the first time, she stood tall not as a cleaner, but as herself. Gasps filled the hall. Some employees covered their mouths in shock. Others whispered frantically to one another. "This," the CEO said firmly, his voice ringing through the hall, "is my mother." The silence that followed was heavy. Every eye turned toward her, and for the first time, those who had mocked her, ignored her, or disrespected her felt the weight of their actions. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. The CEO's mother stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but it carried strength that silenced the whispers. "For weeks," she said, "I walked among you. I cleaned your offices, your hallways, your cafeteria tables. I heard your laughter, your conversations, your kindness, and your cruelty." She pulled the small notebook from her pocket and held it up. "I wrote everything down. Every word. Every action. I saw who treated me with dignity, and I saw who treated me like I was nothing. Some of you showed kindness that touched my heart. Others showed cruelty that revealed your true selves." A wave of discomfort rippled through the room. Faces turned pale. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, already knowing the role they had played. She opened the notebook and read aloud. "One of you said, 'Old people shouldn't be working, probably desperate for cheap labor.' Another said, 'Cleaners are invisible. You can treat them however you want.' And one of you mocked me, directly calling me useless. The crowd stirred. Murmurs filled the air. Some employees looked horrified, others guilty. The CEO stepped forward again, his voice like steel. I have the recordings. I have the names. This is not gossip. This is proof. Some of you treated my mother, who you thought was just a janitor, with respect and humanity. And for that, I am proud. But others revealed cruelty, arrogance, and disrespect. You disgraced yourselves, and you disgraced this company. Silence. No one dared to move. The employees who had been kind felt relief wash over them. The ones who had been cruel felt exposed, their faces hot with shame. The CEO's mother looked around the room, her eyes sharp but filled with quiet sadness. "This was never about me," she said softly. "It was about your hearts. Treat someone when you believe they have no power. That is who you really are." Her words cut through the air like a blade. The CEO took a deep breath. "Those of you who showed respect to you will be recognized. You are the ones who carry the true spirit of this company. But those who mocked, disrespected, and belittled you will not remain here. Effective immediately, you are dismissed." Gasps echoed once again. A few employees cried out, trying to defend themselves, but the CEO raised his hand. "Do not waste your breath. Your actions spoke louder than your excuses." One by one, the guilty lowered their heads, knowing there was no escape. The notebook and recorder had captured it all. Their arrogance had been their downfall. The CEO's mother stepped back, her part complete. She didn't look at the people who had insulted hers. She didn't need to. The truth had already been revealed. And the consequences were in motion. For the rest of the employees, the lesson was unforgettable. Respect was no longer just a word on a company poster. It was alive, enforced, and demanded. And no one would ever look at the janitors, the cleaners, or the lower-level staff in the same way again. As the meeting ended, the CEO turned to his mother and whispered, "Thank you, Mama. You gave me the truth." She smiled faintly, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "No, son," she said softly. "They gave you the truth. I only showed you the mirror." The conference hall was still thick with silence after the reveal. Some employees sat frozen, too shocked to move, while others lowered their eyes, avoiding the piercing gaze of the CEO. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Nobody had expected the quiet janitor to be the CEO's mother. And nobody had imagined that their every word, their every act had been observed, recorded, and written down. The CEO stood tall at the front of the room, his mother beside him. He took a deep breath before speaking again. "This company was built on values," he said, his voice steady but strong. "Respect, integrity, hard work. Those were the foundations. Without them, we are nothing. And today, I have seen that some of you still hold those values close, but others," he paused, letting his words sink in, "have forgotten them entirely." The guilty ones knew exactly who they were. Some shifted uncomfortably. Some wiped sweat from their brows, and others dared not lift their eyes. The CEO's gaze moved across the room like a searchlight, stopping briefly on faces that had been named in the notebook. Voices caught in the recorder. Effective immediately, he continued. Those who mocked, insulted, and disrespected. My mother believing she was just a janitor will no longer work here. This is not revenge. This is justice. If you cannot treat every person with dignity, then you do not belong in this company. Gasps rippled through the room. A few people tried to protest, stammering excuses. "I didn't mean it that way," or "it was just a joke," but the CEO silenced them with a raised hand. Words have power. Actions reveal character. You showed me who you are when you thought no one important was watching. That is all I need to know. Security was quietly called in. One by one, the worst offenders were escorted out of the room. The arrogant manager, the employees who had laughed in the cafeteria, the ones who had mocked her age, all of them lowered their heads as they left, their careers crumbling in an instant. Their laughter was gone now, replaced by the heavy sound of their footsteps leaving the company forever. But the hall was not filled only with shame. There was also light. The CEO's mother stepped forward again, her eyes soft as she looked at the remaining employees. "I also saw kindness," she said gently. "I saw an assistant who sat with me when I was alone, an intern who held the elevator and treated me with respect, an IT worker who took the mop from my hands when I was in pain, a woman in accounting who offered me water when she saw I was tired. These acts may have seemed small to you at the time, but to me, they were everything." She smiled faintly. "Those moments reminded me that goodness still lives here." The CEO nodded, his voice warming for the first time that day. "Those who showed kindness, humility, and respect, you will be recognized, not because you were trying to impress anyone, but because you revealed your true character when you thought no one was looking. That is the kind of spirit I want to lead this company into the future." He announced promotions for the assistant and the IT worker. The intern was offered a permanent position, and the accountant received public praise for her simple but genuine act of kindness. The employees applauded, this time sincerely, the sound echoing through the hall, not with fear, but with relief and hope. The CEO looked around at the room, his expression softening but still serious. "Let this be a lesson to all of us. Titles do not make us better than others. Positions do not give us the right to treat people as less. The janitor, the cleaner, the receptionist, the intern, every role matters, and how we treat one another, especially those with no power, defines who we truly are." His mother placed her hand gently on his arm. "Respect is not earned by titles," she said quietly, but her words carried through the room. "Respect is something every human being deserves, and the way you treat those who can do nothing for you, that is the measure of your soul." For a long moment, silence filled the hall again, but this time it wasn't heavy with shame. It was filled with reflection. Many employees lowered their heads, not because they were guilty of cruelty, but because they realized how often they had overlooked those around them. A janitor cleaning quietly in the corner, a receptionist sitting at the desk, an intern running errands. They had all been invisible in one way or another, until now. After the meeting, as people slowly returned to their offices, something had changed in the building. The air felt different, lighter. Employees greeted one another with sincerity. They smiled at the cleaning staff, thanked them for their work, and held doors open. The atmosphere of arrogance had cracked, replaced by a sense of awareness and humility. That evening, as the CEO walked his mother to the car, he looked at her with deep gratitude. "You changed everything," he said softly. She shook her head, smiling faintly. "No, son. I didn't change anything. They changed themselves the moment they saw the truth. All I did was show you what was already there." He hugged her tightly, his heart full. "Thank you, Mama, for your courage, for your wisdom, for reminding me what truly matters." She patted his back gently. "Never forget, son. Money builds companies, but respect builds people. And without people, a company is nothing." As the sun set over the city, the CEO knew his company would never be the same again. Some had left in disgrace, others had risen in honor, but all who remained had learned an unforgettable lesson. A janitor's broom had swept away more than dust. It had swept away arrogance, cruelty, and false pride. And in its place, it had left something far stronger. The reminder that dignity is not a privilege, but a right, and from that day forward, no one in that building ever looked at a cleaner or any other ordinary worker the same way again.